Great, thank you. And welcome everyone to our Tuesday, August 10th, 2021 regular business meeting of the EBMUD Board of Directors. In accordance with the Governor's Executive Order N-0821, which suspends portions of the Brown Act, this meeting will be conducted remotely. A physical location has not been provided for this meeting. I am sorry we're running late, but we did have a long closed session meeting, and we are here now. The announcement that the Planning Committee met this morning and will report out under item 19. All directors, including myself, are participating remotely. Madam Secretary, will you please call roll?
Director Coleman.
Present.
Director Katz.
Present.
Director McIntosh.
Here.
Director Mellon.
Present.
Director Patterson.
Present.
Director Young.
I'm here.
President Lenny.
Here. So now it's time for the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And
to
to
the
the
republic
republic for which it stands, one
one
nation, under
under
God,
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all.
Great. And our next item is a presentation. Clifford, do you have a presentation to present?
I do. The National Association of Clean Water Agencies awarded the district their Platinum Peak Performance Award. The Platinum Award recognizes wastewater agencies with 100% compliance with their discharge permit over a consecutive 5-year period. Platinum Award status continues when 100% compliance is maintained beyond the initial award. This award represents the 16th consecutive Platinum Award for the district and celebrates 21 years of perfect permit compliance at the main wastewater treatment plant. This translates into 7,671 days of permit compliance. This award is only possible due to the outstanding work, continuous commitment, and collaboration of the 280 employees in the wastewater department that demonstrate the district's values of stewardship, respect, integrity, and teamwork. The wastewater department is represented today by the following: Sue Berg, Senior Chemist; Angela L. Tabani, Senior Civil Engineer; Wilson Fong, Administrative Clerk; Randy Hernandez, Plant Maintenance Mechanic; Diana Lee, Associate Civil Engineer; Jason Lee, Wastewater Operator 2; Aaron McLean, Senior Administrative Clerk; Colin Moy, Senior Environmental Health and Safety Specialist; and Andre Williams, Instrument Maintenance Supervisor. Please join me in congratulating the wastewater department for a job well done.
Thank you so much. You know, these awards are always obviously a great way to start out our meeting, but a great way also just to feel proud of the hard work that's often not recognized by our employees, and the great job, and obviously the just high standards to which we all hold ourselves to delivering services to the public, whether it's water or our wastewater treatment. So thank you to all of you and to everyone who's involved in making this the 16th year of winning this award. Thank you so much. All right, on to announcements from closed session and a break from tradition. I do have something to report out today. The board in closed session this morning and this afternoon, by unanimous vote of the directors attending, authorized the general counsel to initiate litigation in one matter. This action, defendants, and other particulars will be disclosed upon inquiry once the action is formally commenced. There are no other announcements from closed session. And we're on to public comment. If members of the public wish to speak on agenda items or non-agenda items, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. Those comments on items that are not agendized will be heard at this time. Comments on agenda items will be heard when the item is up for consideration. When prompted, please state your name, affiliation if applicable, and topic. The secretary will call each speaker in the order received, and you'll be queued up for us to hear. Each speaker is allotted 3 minutes to speak. However, I have the discretion to amend this time based on the number of speakers. The secretary will track time and inform each speaker when the allotted time has concluded. Risha, do we have anyone to speak in our?
We have Eric Larson, and we actually have Eric Larson and Yvette Rivera. Eric, you should be able to unmute your mic, and your 3 minutes will start now.
Thank you, Risha. Good afternoon, President Lenny and directors. I'd like to provide a brief comment after the general manager's report.
Okay.
Okay.
Yvette, you should be able to unmute your mic, and your 3 minutes will start now.
At this morning's closed board meeting, I read excerpts of the Saji Pierce and Ariel Bland civil rights lawsuit against Craig Spencer, Laura Costa, and EBMUD. As the public knows, I've been speaking about this lawsuit at public meetings for a few months now. At one meeting, I compared EBMUD to the Catholic Church that uses parishioner funds to hire the best law firms to protect its pedophiles, and said that EBMUD does the same with ratepayer funds to hire the best law firms to protect its misogynists, racists, and harassers. At that same board meeting, Craig Spencer's retirement was announced, and his protege and replacement, Derek McDonald, went on and on about how he was mentored and supported by Craig Spencer throughout his career at EBMUD. A few weeks later, I spoke again, but this time it was against Craig Spencer receiving accommodation for his service at EBMUD. In that same meeting, board members congratulated Mr. Spencer for his service, and Mr. Spencer expressed his appreciation to the board of directors for their unfaltering loyalty to staff. Well, a quick look at our employee directory shows that Craig Spencer hasn't retired, and I can only assume that he's going to hang out at EBMUD through 2021 until he gets his annual bonus that will soon be approved by General Manager Clifford Chan and this board of directors. So in honor of plaintiffs Saji Pierce and Ariel Bland, I'm going to end my public comments today by reading from 3 excerpts of their complaint for retaliation, employment discrimination, hostile work environment, and wrongful termination and damages. 28. At the time of her application, Plaintiff Bland had worked for 4 years as an in-house counsel for 2 public agencies, externed with a United States District Court judge, and had experience in litigation and transactional work. 36. Commencing on July 22nd, 2019, and continuing thereafter, defendant Spencer did not promote Plaintiff Bland from attorney 2 to attorney 3, despite the fact that Plaintiff Bland met all of the requirements for an attorney 3, exceeds expectations on performance appraisal in June 2020, and did more work in comparison to white attorneys on a similar or higher level than her. Defendant Spencer did not show any interest in mentoring or developing Plaintiff Bland as an attorney or have any conversations with her about a path to promotion. 37. On April 16, 2020, Plaintiff Bland filed a discrimination complaint against defendant Spencer. Shortly after Plaintiff Bland filed her complaint, defendant Spencer began to retaliate against her. Defendant EBMUD did nothing to protect her from his retaliation during 7 months it took to complete the investigation, or even after the investigation concluded with a finding that he had engaged in racial bias against Plaintiff Bland. These words are taken directly from the federal complaint filed by Plaintiffs Bland and Saji Pierce, and I'll be continuing with reading from this lawsuit in future board meetings. Thank you.
All right. I just want to add that we cannot comment on ongoing litigation. However, the district takes any allegations of discrimination seriously. The district has thoroughly reviewed the facts and believes these allegations are unfounded. We are deeply committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to ensuring that the district fosters a work environment in which all employees feel respected, supported, and valued. Risha, are there any other speakers at this time?
No other speakers.
All right, so we're on to our consent calendar. Any items that board members wish to put aside or pull off for now?
I'll move 1 through 14.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Director Coleman, seconded by Director Patterson. We'll take a roll call vote.
Director Coleman,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director McIntosh,
Yes.
Director Mellon,
Yes.
Director Patterson,
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
President Lenny.
Yes. All right, we have a unanimous vote on the consent item calendars.
One moment,
Uh,
President Lenny, we have one other speaker for public comment. They just raised their hands. I believe it may be on something that's not on the agenda. Can I allow that person to comment at this time?
Yes.
Thank you. Barb Sorensen, you should be able to unmute your mic.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's Nick Lawrence, signed in as Barb Sorensen.
Okay, your 3 minutes will start now, Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you. Members of the board, by the way, the meeting on July 25th, I noticed was canceled without notice. It just said canceled on the login page. I understand everybody was on vacation. That's good, but it would have been nice to know that in advance, instead of just seeing that it was summarily canceled, is what it said. And I did note that today's meeting did not start until about over an hour.
That's because we're talking about your fucking.
Yeah. So I'm speaking today about the inadequate fire hydrant on Tappan Terrace in Orinda. It is a dangerous condition of public property that continues. The district and the board are aware of it. Mr. Chan and I have spoken of it. That would be Clifford Chan. I've also spoken with Carlton Chan and Mr. Ambrose. The fire hydrant is inadequate. It's served with a 2-inch rubber hose that cars drive over. I object that EBMUD has described its efforts to fix this condition as diligent. I do not believe that it is diligent. The 2-inch hose is still there. It's still dangerous. There's inadequate flow. Fire season is here, my house, and those of my neighbors are at risk. There is an easement available to EBMUD to run a suitable pipe. 4-inch hose that EBMUD is now proposing is inadequate. It will only give 25% of the flow that the 8-inch pipe that the fire hydrant was designed to have. In short, there is an unacceptable, dangerous condition of public property. Only EBMUD can fix it. I can't fix it. I can't send a crew and attach to the water main and correct it. I'm imploring the board, please fix the fire hydrant. I'd also like to appear in person at an upcoming meeting, be it open session or closed session. I'd appreciate hearing from Risha Cole or someone else on this video on how I may do that. I noticed that the last meeting a month ago appeared to be in the board offices and there were other people present. So I'm assuming that it's possible for non-EBMUD employees to appear. And this is my request to accomplish that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Risha, do you care are you able to comment on any of the items that he referred to in terms of notice and ability to appear before the board?
Right, so the notice was posted on the website. The website was updated with the cancellation notice, and the actual web page was updated to state that the July 27th meeting was canceled, and the next meeting is August 10th. Mr. Lawrence contacted our office, and we let him know. We confirmed that the meeting was canceled and gave him information about the August 10th meeting.
All right. I would just add, so, we are obviously remote now. We were in person for 1 or 2 meetings. And it's an unfortunate thing when the time comes that we can meet in person and we can have members of the public join us in person. We'll be sure to let you know. But right now, under the governor's order, we're not allowed to have people meet in person with us, other than, staff and board members for that. And finally, I would just comment, my apologies for when our closed sessions run over. That's not something that we have total control over in that. And I know it disrupts people's schedules. We're very well aware of that and try to keep all our meetings on time. But as you probably know and would be aware, there's just, circumstances where we need to serve the public's business by making sure we have a thorough discussion of items.
President Lenny, I would also like to note that when the board was meeting in closed session, the website was being updated every time the meeting was being delayed. So the general manager was checking in with me. We were updating the website. So if somebody is interested in what time the meeting starts, if we're going to be late, we update our website. We update the board meetings webpage with the time live. So it was updated all the way to say that we would start the meeting at 2:30.
Thank you, Risha. But again, I'm aware people set aside time during the day to either appear here or to make comment or otherwise, and it is disruptive, and we apologize for that, but it really can't be helped. Anyone else for public comment?
We have no one else for public comment.
All right, so we'll now move to determination and discussion. General Manager Chan, you have some items.
Yes, we have two appointments. The first one, I'm really excited to bring to the board for consideration the appointment of Derry Moten to lead our new Diversity, Equity, and Culture Department. Derry started the district 6 years ago to lead our Employee and Organizational Development Division. Most recently, he stepped in to oversee our work on diversity, equity, and inclusion and racial equity and justice efforts, and has been doing an outstanding job. Derry brings energy and the right temperament to lead the important work of this department and the district. And with that, I'd like you to consider the appointment of Derry for the special assistant.
So moved. Second. Third.
I think you have your hand up there.
It's a great appointment. I mean, it's wonderful.
I fully concur, and I'm pleased to see that not only this appointment, but the next appointment, we no longer do as consent calendar. And the only thing that I was surprised about, I'm pleased with the appointment, but Derry, I had no idea that you were a Midwesterner with all that Illinois background under your belt. So that's the only comments I have, President Benny.
All right, we have a motion and a second to confirm the appointment. Any further discussion before taking a vote? All right, I will then ask for a roll call vote.
Director Coleman,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director McIntosh,
Yes.
Director Mellon,
Absolutely.
Director Patterson,
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
President Lenny.
Yes. And Derry, as per tradition, we'd like to give you an opportunity to provide any remarks or rebuttals or otherwise at this time.
First of all, I want to thank General Manager Chan, the rest of the senior management team we've had an opportunity to work with over the last several years. And thank you, board, for your vote of confidence today. Our goal will be very simple: to continue the work and to try to keep a focus on diversity, equity, inclusion as we go forward, really highly focusing on how we continue to not only do outreach to continue to diversify the district, but also to make sure that we have inclusive leadership here at the district, that we are continuing to cultivate an atmosphere that we become and continue to be an employer of choice. So we're looking forward to being able to work with the whole district in terms of continuing to cultivate and develop the type of work environment that everyone can be proud of.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Derry.
And Derry, as I think you can tell, we're both enthusiastic that there is this position and that you're the first to fill it. So thank you very much for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you, Derry, and congratulations. Next is the appointment of Felicity Grisham as Attorney 3, and I'll let Derek introduce this item.
Yes, good afternoon, President Linney and members of the board. I am pleased to recommend Felicity Grisham for appointment to Assistant Attorney of the District with the title of Attorney 3. Ms. Grisham has a Bachelor's of Arts degree in psychology from Stanford University, and she then received her law degree from the University of California, Berkeley School of Law. She began her legal career as a litigator with a law firm of Quinn, Emanuel, Urquhart, and Sullivan, and then worked as a staff attorney at the Motions Unit of the United States Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, managing a large caseload of civil and criminal cases. Ms. Grisham also expanded her legal experience by working for the Montana Democratic Party as a voter protection program manager, and so she comes to the district well experienced and with a unique real-world background. And so with that, all of us at the Office of General Counsel are excited to have her join our team with your appointment, of course. And so I request a motion, second, and... Oh,
First time.
I am
Obviously
still new
a
at this.
first timer.
You cannot take President Linney's job there.
I would so
I thought he
move.
was doing fine. I had no
I'll second the
complaint.
motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other comments, questions?
Well, it's
I would
good to
just-
see she has a diverse background, both UC Berkeley and Stanford. Two good schools.
That's going to be tough when it comes for the annual big game, isn't it, John?
Yeah.
This year it'll be Berkeley.
I think coming to us with your experience from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is somewhat legendary amongst the various circuits, is a remarkable background to be bringing to our district. Welcome.
That's great. Think we'll have a roll call vote then?
Director Coleman,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director McIntosh,
Yes.
Director Mellon,
Yes.
Director Patterson,
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
President Linney.
Yes. All right, it carries unanimously.
Thank
And
you.
Felicity, we'll give you an opportunity here.
Great. Well, thank you so much for the introduction, Derek. It's lovely to meet you, President Linney, and the members of the board. I'm obviously extremely excited to join the organization and get to work under Derek's leadership and sort of confront the opportunities and challenges coming ahead. Derek, you've already heard this story, but I'd love to share it again. I grew up in the East Bay. So I was born in Berkeley, went to school in Orinda. And I remember when I was in elementary school, I went to go visit my grandmother in San Diego. And I turned to my parents and I went, the water tastes different here. And that was my first introduction to learning about East Bay mud. And I think if there's an archived letter back from when I was in elementary school, it was saying, yeah, oh, the water's so good here. So thank you. But I just think that underpins sort of my excitement to join the organization that's really serving the community. And I can't wait to join.
Great. Thanks, Felicity. You'll have many opportunities to help ensure that water stays especially clean and fresh for future generations. Thank you for joining us. All right, we are on to our coronavirus update then.
Yes, so next we have Dave Briggs, Director of Operations and Maintenance. We'll give an update on the coronavirus, what we're seeing at EBMUD, and some potential changes to some of the policies that we've had in place for a number of months.
Okay, good afternoon, President Linney, members of the board, and Risha. With your permission, I'll control the presentation from the podium. Okay, great. So on slide 2, we're showing the positivity rate for COVID in our counties here in the Bay Area, and this certainly reflects what we're seeing statewide, nationally, and even at the district, as you'll see in a couple slides. So we are experiencing a significant rise in cases locally and here at the district. And slide 3 showing the vaccination rates you can see that the vaccination rate for fully vaccinated persons at the district in the 72% range, comparable to county rates, and higher than the state of California rate, which is typical. The Bay Area rates are higher than we see throughout the state. I would also mention that sometimes you'll see some of these vaccination rates quoted in terms of a percent of the entire population. What we're showing here is those that are eligible for the vaccine, those that are age 12 and above. So these are higher than you see in terms of the general population. So at the district, we are now at 110 confirmed positives for COVID-19 and have 19 contractors. We've seen 21 positives in the past 4 weeks. About half of those positives are so-called breakthrough cases where fully vaccinated individuals have contracted COVID. And we are quarantining many dozens of people right now. We've had a very busy last 2 or 3 weeks. The severity of symptoms for those people that were breakthrough and fully vaccinated staff of the district have been relatively mild or completely asymptomatic. The more serious symptoms have clearly been felt in the unvaccinated staff, and that's the same condition you'll hear throughout every emergency room in the Bay Area, is that a very, very high percentage of people showing up at the hospitals are unvaccinated, like high 90s. So in response to the elevated infection rates and the lower than desirable vaccination rates, the state has changed its policy in the last couple of weeks, and we've heard several other changes which are summarized on slide 5. So under Governor Newsom's announcement 2 weeks ago, state employees must provide vaccination proof of vaccination, or continue to wear masks and undergo regular COVID testing, and that would be weekly. This is a higher requirement for those workers who are state healthcare workers. Those workers must be vaccinated, plain and simply. At the federal level, we have not heard any formal policy for federal workers, although there's lots of conversations going on. And based on the remarks from President Biden last week or the week before, there's some conversations going on about incentives from the federal level to encourage vaccination, and these would be cash payments passed through the state. So there's some conversations going on there, but that has not manifested itself in any federal policy yet. That's simply just been remarks from the president. The CDC reversed course about a month ago and is now recommending that all persons wear face coverings indoors. At the county level, there's no requirement to be vaccinated at this point. However, all of the Bay Area counties and probably most counties in California have required indoor masking for all persons starting back in early August. So at the district, we began requiring masking for all staff indoors in late July, and that's extended to vendors, contractors, and visitors at district work sites. Outside, masks are required for those who are unvaccinated and in close proximity to others, which we have oftentimes in our pipeline crews. This is not an OSHA requirement or a state requirement. This is just the district going over and above regulations to try to be more conservative and to protect our workers. In late July, we paused our safe return to workplace, which by and large governed how we would return those who are fully telecommuting into our administrative buildings, including this one, the main administration building. That process did not get very far along as of late July, and I don't think we ever exceeded 25% occupancy in this building, and it will remain at 25% or lower for the foreseeable future until this latest surge passes. So in terms of what's going on around us with other policies that are getting formulated, in the private sector, the tech sector, the Facebooks, the Googles, you will see vaccination policies for workers that if they report to a work site, they must be vaccinated. So that's a common requirement you'll see in the tech sector. Kaiser is requiring vaccination of its employees. The city of San Francisco, you're probably aware, is requiring vaccination for its employees. In fact, this week, if you are an employee of the city and county of San Francisco, you have until Friday to disclose your vaccination status. Once the vaccines are approved under normal use authorization and not the emergency use authorization, those employees have, I think, 10 weeks to be vaccinated. And a similar requirement for the state school system at California State University and University of California. And I'd also mention that I believe frontline workers in the city of San Francisco must be vaccinated more or less immediately. Also, Pfizer, I believe the FDA is tentatively scheduled to approve the Pfizer for normal use authorization at the end of the month. Other agencies around us, certainly other water districts are, I think, rethinking their policies as well. And we've seen at the city level, the cities of Los Angeles, San Diego, Long Beach, and I know Sacramento is also actively contemplating this, that moving forward with proof of vaccination or regular testing for those employees. So some cities have already moved forward with that. So the district vaccination policy on slide 8. At the present time, vaccinations are not mandatory, but there are options for moving forward at this point. The district could mandate vaccination similar to state universities, similar to the city of San Francisco. The district could require proof of vaccination with the option to regularly test on a weekly basis, similar to state workers. Testing could be performed by a third party at no cost to employees or at the employee's cost, depending on where they go. And these changes could be made effective in a few weeks after appropriate notifications are made.
So, President Linney, I'd like to take a pause here and get some comments, questions, and maybe direction from the board. Maybe starting with the vaccination policy itself. We have the options of status quo, which is encourage vaccination. The other option is mandatory. And the last is what the state has been pushing for, which is provide proof of vaccination or regular testing. I see Director Coleman has his hand raised.
Sorry, I was on mute. I was about to call on John, and then I see Marguerite's hand also.
Thank you. I'll be very direct on this issue. Well, first, I'm encouraged to see that our numbers have gone up since our last meeting. So thank you for those employees who have gotten fully vaccinated. I do appreciate that. I do also have a very strong belief that we should be vaccinated. Unfortunately, not enough people did. This is my editorial, and that's why we're back where we are today and not meeting in the boardroom, because for different reasons. And it's personal for me, and I'll be very upfront on it. I have a granddaughter who has a genetic heart disease. She's 5.5. She cannot get a vaccination. Her doctors have said if she gets COVID, it could kill her. So this is not an issue of personal freedom. This is an issue of life or death for those who cannot get vaccinated due to age or medical reasons, for whatever the case. Having stated that, I don't think, my personal view is that we should, it shouldn't be mandated, but we should create incentives or de-incentives to be vaccinated. And to answer your question, Clifford, we follow what the state guideline is. But when we go into the further details, I can talk about what I believe we should be doing, unless you haven't laid that out yet. But we have to meet with the unions. We have to meet and confer under state and federal law. That's the appropriate thing to do. If a person has a religious or medical reason, they have that right then not to be vaccinated. Political reasons don't fly with me, and I don't think they fly with the majority of the people in our service area. That's my statement.
All right, Marguerite?
Yeah, I have a question about the San Francisco policy related to, upcoming pending normal use authorization for Pfizer, and presumably, the others will follow. Whether I'm inclined to go with proof of the state, what the state is doing. I don't, however, think that if somebody without a medical or a religious objection chooses not to be vaccinated, that East Bay MUD should be on the hook for paying for those, subsidizing those individuals' choices. And I'm curious about how San Francisco is, they're sort of two-stepping it, that they'll then require vaccination period, I guess, is, Dave, if you could clarify, once a normal use authorization is made. Is that what they're doing?
That's my understanding. Obviously, they have an exemption process, Director Young, but my understanding is
Sure.
10 weeks after normal use authorization of the vaccine, to stay employed with the city and county of San Francisco, you must be vaccinated.
Okay.
I would also mention that new hires, I believe, must be vaccinated or they won't join the workforce.
Frank?
Thank you. I feel that this is an extraordinarily important issue because it's a safety and health issue. That folks are saying, well, I don't know, and golly gee. I respect the health issue. I have a client who cannot take the vaccine, just cannot. And so he's doing all those things like taking the vitamin C, the zinc, and everything else. And his coworkers are going out of their way to be sure they wear a mask. And if a customer comes in their store without a mask, they see to it they take care of that customer. This is about our responsibility to one another. And frankly, I think if somebody doesn't want to get the vaccine and they have no health or bona fide religious avenue to claim, I'm perfectly willing to put them on indefinite leave until such time as they can get cleared one way or the other, or they decide they need to find a job that pays them something, but not paid administrative leave. I feel as strongly as John and others. This is our survival and for all of us. So I appreciate the fact that there's this hard work going on. Stay with it, Dave.
All right, Lisa, I see your hand up. Thank you for using it, because that's really hard to otherwise know.
Oops. This is so very serious, and we all know that. I believe we should mandate vaccination unless there is a medical reason or a religious reason that prevents that. We have to come on one accord with this, because this pandemic will continue for as long as those who are not willing to get vaccinated continue that, whether there's a valid argument or not. If there's religious or a medical reason, absolutely, those should be considered and verified. But I believe we absolutely have to, at this juncture, mandate vaccinations for all of our employees and contractors.
Andy.
Thank you. I agree with my colleagues here who have expressed the importance for public health of our employees, for the safety of our employees and our community at large, to make sure that we have a vaccinated workforce. So in that light, I'm open to mandating vaccination as we see our peer agencies and communities doing the same. I think we do need to immediately move to require proof of vaccination with that option to weekly test. I'm open to, I think it's important that we have an opportunity for the public to comment before we make a final decision if that's what we'll be doing here, and to understand what the impacts of any meet and confer would be. But I think we do need to move in that direction. We need to make sure that our employees are safe.
Great. Andy, you reminded me too, we have Eric Larson who said, I think he wanted to speak after the presentation here.
Right, we have Eric's hand is up. We have Director Coleman has his hand up again. You have another comment, Director Coleman?
Yeah, I do. I'm encouraged, I guess, by the board members' comments on this. I think that we may have some legal hurdles. And I know that FDA is looking at approving Pfizer, and that could be within by the end of the month is what I've read. And that takes it away as an emergency order, as an emergency drug. I do think there are ways that we can set up an incentive or de-incentive program. For example, after September 30th or whatever date we determine, if a person who is not vaccinated falls ill or comes in contact with somebody who has COVID, they should not be paid, period. If a person has been vaccinated and they are in that category of somebody who can become a carrier, unbeknownst, even though they're asymptomatic, they should be paid during that time period that they're at home. I also believe going forward that we should not be paying for the vaccinations of those who are not vaccinated. For the testing, because the onus is on them at this point. This has been a year and a half and it's gone on way too long. It's not acceptable for those who are playing games, quite frankly, in some cases, political games. And it's not right to the employees who have gotten vaccinated and may become a carrier through, that 8 to 10% they say can become ill, but they're not going to go in the hospital, but they may have a family member who cannot be vaccinated for whatever reason. And to have a unvaccinated employee infect somebody where they can cause severe illness or death to somebody who's a family member is just plain wrong. So that's my other comments. So maybe if the board wants to go where they're talking about you're mandating a vaccine, I'm fine with that. I didn't know that's where the board come from, because we can't talk about that stuff due to the Brown Act. But I have a very strong view that this has gone on way too damn long, and we need to do something about it.
Thank you, John. Let's at this time, if Eric is ready to give his comments, I think it would be appropriate. I'd like to hear those.
Okay. We actually have three. So far, I have three
Okay.
speakers for public comment. We're going to start with Eric. Eric, you should be able to unmute your mic, and your 3 minutes will start now.
Thank you, Risha. Thank you, Mr. Briggs, for the presentation, and General Manager Chan, and thanks, Board of Directors. This is Eric Larson, President, American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, Local 444. Our union, and Local 444, has a grave concern about the hazards of the COVID pandemic, the devastating effects that we've seen in our communities, people's families lost, and the economy damaged, and concerns about this new Delta variant that seems to be bringing forth a fourth wave. That said, our local objects to mandatory vaccination policy here at the district. AFSCME 444 represented tradesmen and women have reported to work every single day during this pandemic, except for a brief shutdown, a stop work order of the counties early in the pandemic, and with the exception of a number of people who have been quarantined or isolated. We have not seen any, to our knowledge, workplace transmission of the virus. Here at work, a mask wearing policy has been effective for our workforce to remain safe at work. And that is illustrated by the high number of recent cases that we have seen that have required 0 additional isolations or quarantines of potential close contacts. We encourage the district to continue to monitor and follow suit with the state in terms of masking guidances, especially when indoors, and encouraging and educating our members on the efficacy of vaccines, how important vaccinations are to the individual to protect their health. But we do believe that vaccination is an individual decision, and how people choose to protect themselves outside of the workplace ought to be their own individual decision, except when that decision infringes on the rights of other people. So those who are unvaccinated and choose to be unvaccinated should wear a mask really at all times to stop the spread of this dangerous virus. But mandating a vaccine, especially something still under a emergency use authorization, is inappropriate at best for our workforce. The mask wearing policy and mandates have shown to be effective here at the district. And so we thanks for your ongoing concern about this pandemic. And I remind you again, we've been coming to work every single day. So, you know, the district is doing a pause on the safe return to work. But our 444 people have been coming to work in the face of this hazard, providing clean water and sanitation for our entire community throughout this entire pandemic. So thank you to our workers, and thank you to the workforce.
Thank you, Eric.
Next, we have Joey Smith. You should be able to unmute your mic. And your 3 minutes will start now.
Thank you very much, Risha. Good afternoon to President Linney, Board, General Manager Chan, and David Briggs. Yes, it has been going on too long, way too long. I must concur with my brother Larson. As president of 2019, it is not our idea to try to elongate and make this insufferable, but we've had plenty of our members who have reported to work on a regular basis. We do understand that regular testing is a reasonable request and even potentially to be made into policy that's going into discussion. Denying an employee their earned sick leave is not reasonable at all. Everyone that I have seen around has been very voluntarily masking inside and outside when they are in less than 6 feet distance. We want this to be over just as much as you all have strongly expressed. We are equally concerned about our families. Many of us have lost family. But again, I agree with Brother Larson that we do not know of any contagion that has happened among coworkers. So a mandatory vaccination, we believe, is an overreach because we come to work here because we want to make East Bay MUD better. We stay at East Bay MUD because we work together with management to try to make things better for ourselves, for the district as a whole, and for everyone that we serve, are absolutely fabulous products. So thank you for your time, and please do consider we are in this with you. We may have different opinions, but we all want to get to the end together.
Next, we have Michael Hartlob. You should be able to unmute your mic, and your 3 minutes will start now.
All right, thank you very much. Hello, board. My name is Michael Hartlob. I'm a senior civil engineer here in the engineering department. I'm as an employee, and I'm also a rate player. I just wanted to voice my support for the vaccine mandate. I was so excited to get back to work and return to normal earlier this summer, and it was looking like we were there. Now the Delta virus has put a stop to all our plans to return to work. I supervise a fantastic group of engineers who are also excited to get back to the office. But even before the Delta, the number one issue we were worried about was that an unvaccinated person may infect a vaccinated employee who can then take that virus home back to their kids. And I really didn't have a good way to explain to my employees why they shouldn't be concerned about that. I feel that that's something they definitely needed to worry about. Now, knowing the transmissibility and the kind of breakthrough of the Delta virus, that fear is even more of a concern. So here we are, back to square one after a year and a half. It appears our inability as a society to do the right thing and vaccinate ourselves against this terrible pandemic has set us back to square one. The vaccine is free, it is safe, and it is the only way out of these continued shutdowns. The decision to vaccinate is not a decision that affects just you, it affects everyone around you. We are an agency involved in public health, and I think we need to show the leadership and take a hard stand in support of mandatory vaccination. This virus has taken so much from us, and if we don't take the hard steps to vaccinate everyone, we can find ourselves in this quagmire for much longer than we need. Please consider mandating the vaccine. Thank you.
Next, we have Mark Foley. Mark, you should be able to unmute your mic. Your 3 minutes will start now.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. President Linney, members of the board, GM Chan, and General Counsel McDonald, good afternoon. I'm actually here today not only as an employee of East Bay MUD, but as president of the BART Board of Directors. BART has had to face this very same decision about how to handle masking, social distancing, and vaccination mandates at our agency. And yesterday, we instituted a program to try to encourage vaccination by offering 2 days of floating holiday to employees that get vaccinated within a 1-week window. This will allow us to make sure that our numbers, which were in the 70% range, get to a much more comfortable 90s plus percentage, if not higher, but also allows us to use the mandating of vaccinations as sort of our final plan B move, if you will. This allows us to move folks in that direction in a way that we think is productive and will allow our folks to bring themselves to the recognition that this is something they needed to do. I simply wanted to share that with our board to let them know that other agencies have taken a different approach, and I'll be happy to share how successful we are in the next week or so. Thank you.
Thank you, President Foley.
Next, we have Charla Sullivan. Charla, you should be able to unmute your mic. And your 3 minutes will start now.
Hello, members of the board, council, general manager. I wanted to say hello and thank you for taking this very serious conundrum that our entire society and world is facing right now very seriously, thinking about mandated vaccination. I share Mark Foley's sentiments, and my husband works for BART. So I think taking the approach of incentivizing employees, where BART has been offering 2 floating holidays for those who are fully vaccinated by September 30th, as one way of building morale, bringing those numbers up, and really as a district from a culture perspective saying, this is important, we are incentivizing you to understand how important this is as kind of the first line approach, and then thinking about, well, let's see where those numbers are on September 30th. And their numbers are higher than ours as far as how many people are vaccinated or self-reported vaccinated. To really get the district where it should be, and really build morale within our own work community. And I think that punishing and penalizing actually might make those dig their heels in further. So really thinking about what is our first line, and then saying, hey, let's see what people did. How did they approach the call to action? And then saying, re-looking at mandatory vaccination after that. So I thank you guys for thinking about this very important topic.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan.
We have one more. We have George Cleveland.
All right.
Actually, we have 2 more. So we have George Cleveland and then Deborah Russell. George, you should be able to unmute your mic, and your 3 minutes will start now.
Thank you, Risha. Good afternoon to President Linney, members of the board, GM Chan, and Mr. Briggs. Thank you for the presentation. I share Director Coleman's frustration at the low levels of vaccination, the percentage. I share that. I don't share the belief that people should be deprived of their leave. I believe the COVID leave, I think, is legally mandated. So I don't think you could actually penalize someone in that way. I think the incentivized approach is the way to go. I believe that if you take the approach of mandatory vaccinations, you're going to overtax our recruitment and classification department. They have, from what I understand, 70 recruitments in the pipeline. So everything is taking a while to fill positions. And you'll have people who will leave EBMUD if you try to stick them with a needle, if you try to force them into it. And that doesn't benefit anybody. I think that perhaps there might be less reluctance once the Pfizer is approved for full use, because I think that is giving people some pause. But let's not drop the hammer yet. I know the thought is it's been 18 months and we should. I think that this pandemic is going to go on for quite a long time, regardless of vaccinations, because there are going to be more variants that come about. But let's just incentivize, and let's look at the data that we get from BART, because they're a comparable agency to us in the Bay Area, so they're a source. And let's do that. And remember, as you said earlier in the conversation, it's a meet and confer, because it's a change in working conditions if you try to go the mandate the shot route. So you have to legally meet and confer with the unions over that. And that will take some time too. So even if you try to do it, you're still going to have to meet with us. And considering that we're all in contract negotiations, it's going to be a bit of a challenge to get those meetings done. So let's not drop that hammer. Let's just do the incentivize and see how we go, and see if we can get the percentage up. I mean, I think it would be helpful also to know what the acceptable percentage is where people can be happy with it. Is it 85%? Is it 90%, 95%?
100%.
That figure would be helpful as well. And that's all I have to say on the matter. Thank you very much for your time and your efforts on this very difficult and complex issue. Thank you.
All right, thank you, George.
Next, we have Deborah Russell. You should be able to, okay, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Deborah Russell. I'm an employee of the district as well as a ratepayer. And I just wanted to chime in with my voice and say that although I am vaccinated, I have a young baby at home who is of course not vaccinated. And I am wanted to add my voice to the group who is in support of mandatory vaccination, because I do not want to risk myself as a breakthrough case or risk bringing this dangerous virus home to my young child who is not vaccinated. I love working for the district. I appreciate my employees, but I do not want to be risking my life going to work or the life of my family. And I appreciate that everyone has the right to make their own decision, but with this, it's a public health matter. And when we see the history of vaccinations, you know, my daughter just started daycare and she's required to have vaccinations for many other diseases. Why not this one once it is approved by FDA? So just wanted to add my voice that to please protect district employees and mandate vaccination for all once it is FDA approved. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Okay, that's our last public speaker, and then Director Young has her hand up.
Director Young, why don't you make any comments? I'm still reserving my right for a comment. I haven't made one yet, but go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate the thought of providing more incentives to people to get vaccinated. The thing that the last speaker really you know, brought this home for me, and as a relatively new grandma, I you know, very, very much agree with it, is that right now we are risking very serious illness for the loved ones of our fellow employees that have children that cannot get vaccinated. And I don't have a lot of charity for people that are still hesitant. And I don't think a day off to get vaccinated. I mean, we already allow people to take a sick day if they get vaccinated and have repercussions. We already give people the opportunity to go and get vaccinated on their own time. You know, I appreciate the skepticism that some people have had. And I think those days are over. We've just shown that we're seeing with the Delta variant and whatever the next variant is, that it's even more efficient and more capable as long as we stay in this unvaccinated state or percentage, that our coworker, or you know, our coworkers here at EBMUD that are not vaccinated are putting the rest of us at risk, and that's just not right. So the state policy seems like a reasonable walk of the line. Once the vaccines are subject to normal authorization, I think we want to revisit this and step up again around requiring a vaccination. So I'll let my piece there.
So I want to weigh in here. First of all, I want to start with saying that we're dealing with a different virus than we were a year ago, 18 months ago, 3 months ago. So when we say, oh, people have had 18 months to you know, consider this or something, it's not the same. This is a different one. It's more contagious. It's more virulent to those who haven't been vaccinated. We're very fortunate that the vaccine that we have still protects us in a very huge way, not entirely, but very significantly. And I just, you know, people have to get vaccinated. I don't have charity for those who are still questioning it that much. I really don't. You know, I don't want to lose any employees. over this, but I'm willing to take a fairly strong stand on that. That said, I think I'm still short of a mandate for vaccine, but I'm not, and I want something that will get us to, George said, well, what's the goal here? Is it 85 and 90%? It's 100% with me. There's no reason not to have 100%. I also have a strong feeling that as a public agency, a public employer, we have an obligation not just to our employees, but also to our public. It's important for us to show leadership and to show the public, we don't exist as our own ecosystem. The fact that people hasn't been transmitted at work says, wow, that's great. We haven't, it's very hard to trace to know that for sure, but I think it's also, something that the masking that we've done in the past has been good enough for the virus that we had for the last year and a half, but we now have a new virus. And so we have to step it up in a very significant way. And like I said, you've heard today, people talking about their daughters or granddaughters, kids who can't get vaccinated yet. And I think we just have a strong obligation to the greater public as well to get vaccinated, to make sure that we're doing everything in our power to get people vaccinated. And so I'm strongly in favor of the policy that's being suggested here, that we require testing, basically to line up with what the state is doing right now with their employees, require testing for those who haven't been vaccinated, and those who have been vaccinated, make sure that we have proof that that's true, and just do everything we can to encourage the vaccination and discourage the idea that that's any kind of acceptable sort of behavior to not get vaccinated with this virus. So I'll leave my comments there right now. John?
Yeah, maybe this is like threading a needle. It's been actually a very interesting dialogue amongst the board and the members of the public, employees primarily, who weighed in on this. Maybe one way to approach this is that we are highly encouraging people to get the vaccination until FDA approval of a vaccination is put in place. At that point, it becomes mandatory. If a person is not vaccinated and they become ill or in contact with somebody who has COVID, they lose their pay, not their benefits, but their pay during the period that they cannot work. That's an incentive or a disincentive, depending on how one wants to look at it. I do not think it's our financial obligation going forward, though, that we pay for the testing, because people have had ample time to make that decision whether they want the vaccination or not. And if they choose not to, then it shouldn't be on the burden of the ratepayers to have to pay for that. So I guess my motion, if you want to look at it in a way, is we encourage everybody to get vaccinated. Once the FDA approves a vaccination, which it's supposed to be within the month, they're saying, perhaps, that it then becomes mandatory to become vaccinated. If a person in the meantime is not vaccinated and they come in contact with somebody who has COVID, or they come down with COVID, that if they're, again, not vaccinated, they lose their pay, not their benefits, but their pay. They can use their sick time, but they lose their pay for the time that they have to remain away from the workforce. And that we also
clarification on that, John, could I ask?
Yeah.
When you say get their benefits, so they get their sick pay, so they would be paid as long as their sick leave is viable.
Right. They can continue to use their sick leave, which they've earned. And I think there's a difference between that and, let's say somebody has used all their sick leave, then their pay is their next thing. And right now they get paid during the sick leave period. And maybe it's not that many people. I don't know. But then once the FDA approves a vaccination, it becomes mandatory. If a person chooses not to get vaccinated, then they're putting their job in jeopardy, quite frankly, because it's not fair to the rest of the employees or the employees' families. And that's something that we'll have to figure out through talking with the unions, the best approach and how that can be done legally. I don't like the idea of using the threat of a person losing their job, and anybody's job, but this is a different world we're in today than it was 19 months ago. And it's not fair to those who have been vaccinated, who may get the breakthrough COVID. And they're not going to end up in the hospital in most cases, but they're going to end up sick because of somebody who's chosen not to do it. Again, with exclusion of medical and religious, which is covered by state and federal law. We can't change that, nor should we. That's not our role. But we have a role to protect our employees and the public, as many members of the board have stated and some members of the public have stated. So that's where I'm coming from. And it's threading a needle. Maybe it's not strong enough. Maybe it's too strong. I don't know, but I want to put it out there as an option and a motion, or it can be amended, or however we want to deal with it.
All right, so that's, I'll accept that as a motion right now and ask if there's a second to that, or.
President Lenny, maybe before we do it, there's Director Katz has his hand raised, and there's another member from the public.
Okay, I just, when there's a motion, I like to see if there's at least a second.
I need to have a shorter version of the motion. Is there, can you boil it down?
Yeah, basically, once the FDA approves a COVID vaccination for general use, not emergency use, then it becomes mandatory that our employees at that point in time get the vaccination except for medical or religious reasons. And that would be one segment. The other segment is if somebody is not vaccinated in the meantime and they come down with COVID or in contact, they lose their pay, not their benefits, but their pay, what they would be doing. If they have time off, then they can use their time off. If somebody is vaccinated and they come through, get it through breakthrough, which some people are doing, they should not have that as a jeopardy. We should then cover their benefits and time off as we do currently. And God forbid if somebody were to say they're vaccinated and aren't, and come in and get somebody sick.
Motion.
Yeah. Sorry.
All right, that satisfy your requirements for understanding?
Yeah, I can't second because I think there's too much uncertainty.
Is there a second? Let's not have a discussion yet.
Okay, no, sorry.
And maybe we can take the screen down so I can see everybody a little bit here. That might be helpful in this discussion, I just realized. But is there a second? Doesn't sound like we're ready for a second yet. Andy, you go next.
Yeah, the portion that I agree with John on is the requirement for vaccine after full approval. Once the FDA has moved this past emergency use authorization. So that part I think is the basis for a future action. I think we also need to be clear that this is direction to staff to prepare a policy because there are other details that need to be arranged in negotiations with the unions regarding impacts. I'm not in support of, in the context of a mandate, having a provision that is penalizing regarding pay. I think we are transitioning towards universal vaccination in the context of this discussion. So I don't think that we should be making a concerted effort to have something penal along that journey. And it wasn't clear to me what that, how it was helping. But I do think that, like the board has discussed, having the universal vaccination is helpful. I also think that we should include the direction about, in the interim, having the state like policy for testing in lieu of a vaccination, as was shown in that on the screen. So those are the elements that I think would make sense.
President Lenny?
Right.
Yeah,
Bill, I think I see your hand up. I think I saw that before Marguerite's hand went up. Is that right? Bill, are you have your hand up? Bill, do you have your hand up? Can you hear me?
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, and that I think the time for debate is over. On the 15th of last month, the country opened up. And 10 days later, we were headed back to where we left from 6 months before that. This is a pandemic. There's no time for us to be bartering around what we're willing to do or give up. People have to make a decision and we have to make a policy. We're making a policy in the best interest of both East Bay MUD and all of its employees. I have a continuing commitment for a safe work environment for our staff. And I'm saying the elements of what we're looking at can take us sideways and back overnight. We got to get ready and we got to do something. And that policy that we're talking about establishing really is our link into the chain that hopefully guards America. I just want to say, I've seen enough. I'm home often alone. I watch all the programs. I hear from all of the people who have the knowledge of the science. And I follow the trend that I think is the best course for us at East Bay MUD and for my family. All of my family have had all of the remedies that are available to us. They've all been vaccinated. And so I just want to say, we don't need a whole lot of other debate. And of course, we can't help the penalties. We are providing the assistance and all of the weight of East Bay MUD behind the employees who either for who don't have health reasons for not, and who don't have religious beliefs. Those are the only two elements that are excluded. And even then, they have to have a strong following to make sure that they are not doing contradictory to what's intended. So I wanted to state that clearly for the record and say you're developing the policy yet to come. Let it come back to us, and Clifford, bring it back to us in a way that we can move forward on this, because time is of the essence. We don't have a lot of time. You know, you sit on the sideline and debate and the game's over.
Bill,
That's
so
all
are you saying you're supporting a mandatory? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, yes, and
okay.
including, you know, we don't pay people to come and infect us. If they don't have the legitimate reasons or excuses, then I support that part of the policy as well.
All right, thank you. Marguerite?
Yeah, I think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that Clifford already has the authority under the emergency authorization that we've already given to decide what to do here without our action, and that we're providing him with our guidance today. That said, I mean, I'm going to make a motion that we adopt the state policy with the condition that employees who choose not to be vaccinated must get tested weekly at their own expense and on their own time. and that we do not, that after September 30th, when the COVID leave policies are over, that employees who fall ill to COVID who have not been vaccinated may use their existing sick leave, but there will not be any, further extensions offered them, that people that are vaccinated will be covered. That those who need to quarantine due to exposure to COVID who've been vaccinated will be paid, but those who have not been vaccinated and need to quarantine will not be paid. And that once the vaccine is authorized for normal use, which we don't know when that's going to happen. I mean, people are saying a month from now, but it could be sometime later in the fall. We don't know when children are going to be able to get vaccinated at this point. So I would say further that at the point when it does become authorized for normal or under normal use authorization, that then we go to full mandatory. So that's my motion. I'm sorry that wasn't as succinct.
How is that different than what
John's was encourage, and I think we're saying you need to be vaccinated or you're going to pay for your testing and you're going to pay for. Or John, maybe I misunderstood.
I did say that.
So are you guys on the same page again? Because that's really playing with my mind here.
Yes, I think we're on the same page. Basically, Marguerite, you said what I said, maybe in a better way.
Well, I thought you were saying that we wouldn't have the mandatory testing before the normal use authorization, that we continue in the encouraging vaccination mode.
Well, we want to encourage people still to get it, but my bottom line is once the FDA gives approval, it's mandatory that you get the vaccination.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
And then if somebody is not getting the vaccination, they become ill, they are not paid. They can use their benefits, but they're not paid. If somebody is vaccinated and they get it through this breakthrough, then they have all the current benefits that we currently subscribe.
Right.
I think we said the same thing.
Yeah, I think you focused on that more than the testing, and Marguerite focused more on the testing, but I think I heard the same thing.
So the two of them are agreeing. Let's go forward and take a vote.
Clifford, I'm sorry, did you?
Yeah, but maybe just for my benefit and for the records, because I really appreciate this conversation, how difficult it is, but I want to make sure that I understand what the board is saying. So at this point in time, employees must provide proof of vaccination, and that proof would be not self-attesting, but actually show us your vaccination card or some other proof. Or if you choose not to get vaccinated or tell us that you've been vaccinated, you will be tested weekly at the employee's cost. And that after September 30th, when the state leave expires, that if you get exposed at work and you have to quarantine, if you are fully vaccinated, the district will continue to pay for your cost of quarantine. But if you are unvaccinated, you will have to use your own time. On top of that, if and when the vaccine is approved, not the emergency use authorization is approved, then you're asking us to then mandate vaccinations for employees. All this said with the exceptions of people with religious or medical exceptions. Did I capture that correctly?
Perfect. You should make the motion, Clifford.
We already have a motion though. And a second. We just have to decide who made the motion and who seconded. I'll accept Marguerite's motion and John's second. How's that?
That's fine with me.
All right.
Okay.
I have a clarification or friendly amendment to request. I'm concerned about employees that might potentially come to work sick or come to work infected during this period between the end of supplemental sick leave and the beginning of emergency use authorization. I'd like to move the date that we would no longer provide that supplemental sick leave until the time that emergency use authorization occurs.
Wait, so question. So what you're saying is that if people that aren't vaccinated get sick, that we're going to still pay them, if they've exhausted their sick leave, and we're after September 30th when COVID leave is over, unless Biden extends it, which certainly, could happen, I suppose, that we pay people for their time off, for their time to be sick.
While they're quarantining, I'm concerned about a perverse incentive where people may still find a financial necessity to come to work. So it's a challenge with this situation. It's a reason why sick leave is important.
I disagree with you, Andy. I mean, if somebody is choosing not to get the vaccination and they get sick, it's their own damn fault at this point in time. Sorry, I'm being blunt. If they have the vaccination and they get sick, it's because it's a breakthrough, because so many people have not gotten vaccinated, and that's why the variants are becoming stronger.
And in the motion that Director Young made, Director Katz, for those employees, they would be required to be tested. So if you test and you test positive, you would not be coming to work.
All right.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Thank you.
I'm not comfortable accepting your suggestion.
Yeah, I think Clifford did help me feel much better about, with implementing our testing protocol. I'd like the staff to explore the feasibility of something that was more frequent than once a week. We might want to have something that's more frequent to be able to make sure that we have a safe workplace. I'll leave that to staff to investigate. But I think with that clarification, I've expressed my general concern and preference, but am in agreement about the all other aspects of the policy, including the modification of sick leave after emergency use authorization. So with that expression, I can vote for the motion.
And clearly Clifford's and his staff going to have to come up with how we, if it passes and post FDA approval of a vaccine, how they're going to deal with those employees who are not vaccinated. That's still to be dealt with. We're not talking about how it's going to be done, but staff has to come to us with what they recommend.
And Dave, just a reminder, San Francisco is saying they're not going to be working with them anymore. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay.
I mean, just to make that more full of an answer, city and county employees of San Francisco have until this week to declare their vaccination status. They have 10 weeks following approval under the normal use authorization of the vaccine to become vaccinated, or they will be separated from the city.
So there's a gray area in San Francisco of 10 weeks, or between now and the period that the emergency use authorization is transformed into normal.
Is the San Francisco one tied to the emergency authorization?
Well,
no.
It's tied to the normal use authorization.
Right. So they have to. Do people have to get tested once they've declared their vaccination status? If they're not,
I don't believe so.
Huh. Kind of a weird policy.
I would also maybe add to the motion, just for clarity, for implementation, to give a little runway time as far as the testing, that we make it effective, September, the week of September 5th of the holiday, but September 6th, that employees have, a couple of weeks to decide whether or not they want to get vaccinated or continue testing. And then, of course, once the vaccine gets approved, then, with your guidance, we would move forward with mandatory vaccination. They'll also give us time to meet with the unions.
I think that's acceptable.
That's acceptable to me.
Yes. All right. I think we're ready for a vote. We did have one other person who wanted to speak. I wasn't, because they showed up late there, I wasn't, didn't want to disrupt our original discussion, but if everybody's okay with that, let's,
Do you want to take the public comment, President Lenny?
Yes.
Okay. So we have Michael Morgan on the line, you should be able to unmute your mic. And your 3 minutes start now.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
My name is Michael, I'm a ratepayer and a fellow employee of the district, and I want to voice my opinion against mandatory vaccines. I'm not against people getting vaccinated, but I say that I've had to report to work and started. We've had zero transmission amongst employees to each other, and we've still gotten the job done with and without vaccine. We know that some of our fellow employees are not vaccinated. We still continue to work. We know wearing our masks has been working. We've had zero spread amongst each other, but the murmurs amongst all the other fellow employees in the yards, in the field, are very polarized when they feel that they are being pushed to do something they're not really comfortable with, be it they're not sure of the follow implications when they're trying to have children in the future, they have all those effects. So until further FDA approval is, they still aren't comfortable with a mandate. So also, you're not going to be able to fix the pandemic at the level. Since we've had zero transmission spread from employee to employee, it is coming from outside the district. And if you're still able to bring it home vaccinated, you're not making a difference amongst our. So for that, I know there's a lot of people that are very uncomfortable. They must be vaccinated by the employer. They do it on their own terms. And for you guys scared that we're going to spread it to you, unless you come into the trenches and the schools parts, you're not going to get it spread while we're out in the field. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments, Michael. I'll only say this is a different virus than we had before, and it calls for a different plan, and that's my reply to that. But all right, so if we're ready, unless
I
there's
just say 86,000 children were diagnosed with COVID last week.
Yeah.
all right. Clifford, you're good with us taking a vote and moving
Wait,
forward with this?
Wait, we have one more member of the public who has a comment.
Okay, we really want to hear people because I think it's helpful to us to get an understanding.
Okay. Jeff Bandy, you should be able to unmute your mic. And your 3 minutes start now.
Hi, good afternoon, board. Thank you so much for taking my call. My name is Jeff Bandy. I am an employee, ratepayer, and a proud member of our Local 2019. I wanted to just contribute briefly to the conversation. I also have 2 small children at home that are unable to be vaccinated. And as Director Linney mentioned, this is a very different virus than we had last year. I'm very concerned about Delta breakthrough particularly, and I believe that vaccines are our strongest barrier to continuing this grueling pandemic that we've all been through. And I'm strongly in favor of the vaccine mandate that is being discussed, that we are hearing a bit about, and once FDA approval is being put through. And certainly the state guidance for testing and self-reporting vaccination status is a great first step in the interim. So I'm very encouraged to hear the direction that the board and Clifford are taking, and I appreciate your time.
All right, thank you, Jeff. And I really appreciate the dialogue that we've had here. I don't think any of us knew where this was going to put us, end up here. And appreciate the input from the employees and our own ability to have a dialogue and process here. I think we'll reach a conclusion that will be best for our employees. Clifford, you get the last word here.
No, this was a great conversation. I appreciate it. This is a difficult decision, and I thought it was important to have this discussion with the board to get some direction on where to go, and it's pretty clear to me what the direction is. So if you'd like to do a roll call vote just to hear from the rest of the board on that motion.
Yeah, I think good. So, Risha, we're ready for a roll call vote.
Okay, can I ask that you just repeat, just so it's in line, just repeat what we're voting on, and then we'll take the motion and the second, just so we'll have it in the record in one place.
Okay, so
Clifford, go. You do it.
Okay, as I hear the motion, currently we would require employees to provide proof of vaccination or test regularly, which it would be weekly. That would go into effect September 6th. For proof of vaccination, employees cannot self-attest. They have to provide either their COVID card or some other actual proof that they've been vaccinated. For the COVID testing, employees will be doing it on their own time at their own cost. After September 30th, when the state leave expires, if an employee who is fully vaccinated, if they get COVID at work and they're asked to quarantine, the district will cover their time off. If they are unvaccinated, the employees will be using their own paid leave for time off. When the vaccine gets final approval from the FDA, then we will move forward with mandating vaccinations for our employees. Of course, all this with the exceptions of people with sincere religious or medical issues.
And just for further clarity, Clifford, you're saying this new policy would take effect September 6th?
September 6th, before we start asking people to report test weekly if they're unvaccinated, and provide proof of vaccination. Give employees some time to get that information, and also for us to be able to collect all that information.
Great. All right. Risha?
Yes, and so our first and second, I just want to repeat that.
Marguerite is the first and
I'm
John's
the
the
second.
second.
All righty. Roll call vote.
Unbeatable 1-2 combination.
All right. Director Coleman?
Yes.
Director Katz?
Yes.
Director McIntosh?
Yes.
Director Mellon?
Yes.
Director Patterson?
Yes.
Director Young?
Yes.
President Lenny?
Yes. We get unanimous agreement on that. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Next, we have a brief update on the drought. That's going to include discussion on what we're doing for our operations in taking Freeport water, how we're managing the cold water pool, and our conservation outreach efforts. I will share with the board, as far as conservation, in June, when you look year over year, we saw a 4.5% decrease in consumption. And then for July, that increased to 8.5%. So our customers are moving in the right direction. And Mike Tognolini, Director of Water and Natural Resources, will begin the presentation.
Good afternoon, President Linney and members of the board. I'll be providing a brief update on drought activities. In addition to me, you'll be hearing from Michelle Workman from Fisheries and Wildlife, Alice Toohey from Water Conservation, and Andrea Polk from Public Affairs. First, an update on our Central Valley Project water contract allocation. And the update is that there's no change from the last report. Our CVP allocation for this year is 33,250 acre feet, which is a 25% allocation from our contract. And the district will begin its Freeport diversions on September 15th. We're also involved in a couple of efforts this year regarding water transfers and wheeling of water. The first is that we're a 2,000 acre foot transfer of water from Contra Costa Water District's CVP allocation to EBMUD to be diverted at Freeport this October. And secondly, as a part of our existing agreement with Contra Costa Water District under our Freeport Settlement Agreement, provide wheeling capacity for 3,200 acre feet of Contra Costa CVP allocation to be delivered to Contra Costa Water District in the October and November timeframe. Looking to water transfers and wheeling for next year, the district is initiating a strategy to procure up to 50,000 acre feet of water transfers. That would be our stretch goal to get to 50,000 acre feet of available supply if next year is dry, and assuming continued low Central Valley Project allocations, this would provide some security to provide additional supplemental supplies through water transfers. We've initiated discussions with many sellers regarding this quantity and are continuing those discussions now, and hope to have some better sense of how many will be locked in, how many we'll have options for, and how many will be less certain in the coming months. And then in addition to that, we are anticipating that we may be receiving a request from Marin Municipal Water District to wheel water for them as soon as 2022 based on their drought situation. Finally, for me, the last slide I'll present is recent state water board actions. The water board is going to be publishing an emergency regulations that would enable them to initiate curtailment on thousands of water users throughout the state by the end of August. And this slide really just shows the process that they've been going through. They've held some initial meetings, issued a notice of rulemaking, had a board meeting with discussion of this item, and received public comments in early August. Actually, it was last week. It's now been submitted to the Office of Administrative Law. Once that review is complete, the regulation could go into effect again within another week or so, and curtailment orders could be in place by the end of this month. As was the case in our previous updates, we do not expect any current state board curtailment orders to affect our 2021 water supplies. And with that, I'll turn it over to Alice Toohey to Michelle Workman to discuss our fishery and wildlife activities. And Michelle, I can advance the slides for you.
Great, thanks, Mike. So on the topic of cold water pool management, our joint settlement agreement under FERC requires that we use best efforts to maintain 28,000 acre feet of cold water pool in Comanche Reservoir. And this water is needed to support cold water releases to the McCollum River for Chinook salmon spawning and egg incubation in the fall. We currently have approximately 30,000 acre feet of cold water in Comanche, and we manage this through weekly coordination meetings between operations staff and water and natural resources staff. The keys to the success of the cold pool management include weekly coordination and adaptive management of operations, including adaptively managing power generation to maximize cold water delivery to Comanche, adaptively managing party outlet tower gates to provide both cold water volume available to Comanche and at the same time providing high quality drinking water to our service area. We also use modeling projections to help guide the decision-making process and predict outcomes. And having a plan that can adapt in real time to changing conditions is really helping with the success of this effort. Next slide. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about some additional temperature management actions. Staff has been collaborating with some local stakeholders in the McCollum watershed and resource agencies for a number of years in an effort to look at moving salmon upstream of Pardee as a method to provide cold water refuge during extended droughts. We've developed a lot of the information needed on habitat availability and suitability upstream, and we're now working to address the resource agency's concerns regarding pathology risks. There are risks to the hatchery population from upstream pathogens that could be introduced with fish upstream, and we're currently assessing some options to address those risks to the hatchery and evaluating the cost benefit of possible solutions to continue to move this project forward. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. And next is Alice Toohey, Water Conservation.
Yes. Thanks so much. Thank you, President Linney and members of the board. So Andrea Polk and I are going to be doing just a quick update on our drought outreach, communications, and advertising. As the general manager said, we are happy to see that our customers are responding as they usually do, and we're hoping to see those numbers continue to rise. It's been a busy couple months with a lot of public meetings, media attention, and then a lot of work on sort of incorporating this messaging into some of our existing tools, and then also developing some ads, which we're happy to share with you today. So we did work, and these were internal products. So a big shout out to our graphics folks, particularly Todd Salerno and Mike Bergstrom, who came up with these ads. You might recall early on, we had talked about the sort of 3 key messages that we're really trying to convey to customers in terms of conserving water. And that's irrigating efficiently, finding and fixing leaks, and then being mindful of their indoor water use. So we have developed 3 ads just as a start that kind of speak to those 3 topics, and have started placing them. So some of them have already started showing up in the world already. If any of you get Diablo Magazine or the Castro Valley Times or some of those other publications, you might have seen them. And we are also kind of, cautiously dipping our toes into the waters of online digital advertising, looking at doing some advertising through some streaming radio applications that started, and then of course using social media. So if you could advance to the next slide, please. So for our outdoor irrigation message, this is what the ad generally looks like. The nice thing about these 3 ads is that, now that we have the photos and we have the messaging and the look and feel, they can sort of be reformatted to fit in different places. So we are also talking about developing some banners for our recreation areas that feature this advertising. And we're trying to strike a tone that's a little bit positive, I guess is the word that I would use, since there is a lot of really hard, heavy news out in the world right now. We want to kind of break through that. Next slide, please. So for find and fix leaks, this is, I think, sometime in the next few weeks going to start showing up on the back of customers' envelopes when customers get their water bill. And then if you could advance to the next slide. This is my personal favorite, to just be mindful of water use in general. We're encouraging people to enjoy responsibly. And so this is going to be showing up on billboards, transit shelters, and in some other locations. So again, a big shout out to our folks in graphics who came up with these. And we are, in sort of end of July, beginning of August, starting to actually, see these ads out in the world, and we'll continue that. I'm going to turn it over to Andrea now, who's going to talk a little bit more about where we're placing the ads and then some of the digital advertising.
Great. Thank you, Alice. So here, what we want to let you know is that it's important to us that we make sure that we're communicating with our non-English speakers as well. So we do have ads that are translated into Chinese, Spanish, and Vietnamese. And those ads are running in publications such as El Mundo for Spanish, Sing Tao for Chinese, and Mo Magazine for Vietnamese. In addition to that, we are utilizing our Clear Channel credits. You should start seeing those advertisements on transit shelters and 2 digital billboards, both at the MacArthur Maze and South on 880, beginning later on this month. And also our Oakport facility will also be part of this campaign. Next slide. We started this month doing some ads on Pandora. So the idea here is that we came up with some local artists and featured some songs that are 5 minutes or less. And we tie the words of the song into the messaging and encourage people to take showers that are 5 minutes or less in length. Next slide. So regarding our social media and media outreach, we've gotten some good coverage. Every Wednesday, we do a Water Wednesday ad, and the last post received, 22 positive reactions, 14,000 impressions across the service area. And on Twitter, it got 470 impressions, and on Facebook, 923. And our media outreach continues. We have 64 drought interviews, drought water supply so far, and I'm sure there'll be plenty more. Next slide, please. Our monthly Water Wednesday speaker series is quite popular. I think the last one, about 250 attendees. The next one will be on August 18th. And it's entitled The Other F Word, and it's focused on fire prevention in the watershed, managing fire flows, how we respond to red flag warnings, and provide information that we hope will be of assistance to our customers. And information on that series is available on ebmud.com/Water Wednesday. Next slide. Any questions? That's it. Thank you.
Andrea, do we get detail about beyond, sort of impressions or views of who and for our Water Wednesday, if who's tuning in at all?
It depends. If they leave comments for us, then we know exactly who it is. So if they leave comments or they message us, we know who it is. We do analytics monthly to check to see what posts are the most popular. And sometimes if a post is very popular, we'll go ahead and boost that post, like in Facebook, for example, to try and get that message to carry out even further.
Thank you.
I've seen some of the ads, particularly in the Castro Valley Forum. They're very nicely done. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you for that presentation, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Next up is the excessive water use penalty ordinance. And last month, we presented to the Planning Committee our proposed changes to the ordinance. Today, Alice Toohey is going to share with you the proposed ordinance that incorporates the feedback from the committee.
Yes, thank you. Risha, could I ask if you could share the slides? Thank you. So yeah, as the general manager said, we're going to just be doing a quick update on the excessive use penalty ordinance and describe where we're kind of heading with this. Next slide, please. So just a reminder, this ordinance was enacted by East Bay MUD's board back in 2015. At that time, during that drought, the thinking was that we wanted to discourage excessive use of what we consider to be discretionary use of water, particularly for outdoor irrigation during droughts. So this does apply to single-family residential customers since they tend to have more of that discretionary use. As currently written, the ordinance applies to stage 3 and 4 droughts, and it sets thresholds for excessive use and sets a penalty of $2 per CCF for any water use that's above that threshold. At that time, we did discover, as I'm sure many of you remember, that because this was a penalty ordinance, any customers who were in violation of that ordinance were subject to Public Records Act requests. And we did at that time receive several requests from the media, and we had to share that customer information about customers who had exceeded the threshold and been penalized. Since then, in 2016, there was a State Bill 814 that became law that prohibits excessive water use for single-family residential customers statewide during certain conditions. So basically, you can think of it as, anytime we have mandatory rationing in place, we have to have a system to discourage excessive use, or if there's a governor-declared drought that has certain triggers that could trigger the requirement for this excessive use penalty ordinance as well. So we are in the process of updating the ordinance to comply with that new state law, and also just to kind of bring it up to 2021 based on our experience last time. Next slide, please. So one of the changes that we're proposing has to do with the process for enforcement. The way that the ordinance was written, basically a customer found out that they were in violation when they got their water bill. Their water bill served as the notice of violation and had that penalty added to it. This time we're recommending to amend the ordinance to add a warning for the first billing cycle that a customer exceeds the threshold. That way we don't have to worry about customers potentially who might have a leak or something like that, or a meter error, even though that's sort of, customers can appeal that. We want to give those customers a chance to solve the issue and not end up accidentally sort of being caught up in a public records request. So the idea is that if a customer, during each drought cycle, if a customer has one exceedance, they would get a warning letter from us. And then if they have an additional exceedance, then they would be considered in violation of the ordinance. We also are recommending a change to how the penalty fee is calculated. So in 2015, the penalty fee was set at $2 per CCF, as I mentioned. We want to remove the specific dollar amount from the ordinance and have that penalty be set by the board at the time that the ordinance is enacted. That way we can adjust to the severity of the drought, we can adjust for inflation without having to always go through this same process of updating the ordinance. Next slide, please. And I think the real sort of heart of what we want to sort of just discuss with the board today is the penalty thresholds themselves. So as I mentioned, we would be, adding stage 2. This table shows what our recommendation is for the ordinance at this time, based on the discussion we had with the planning committee. So for stage 4, we would keep the same threshold, which is 80 CCF for its bi-monthly billing cycle. So that works out to be around 1,000 gallons per day. We did a review of 2020 billing data, and saw that in 2020, about 5% of our single family residential customers had a billing period that met this criteria. So that's not to say that they're using that water all the time. Again, a lot of this is for irrigation. So, more use in the summer, there might also be leaks or things of that nature. For stage 3, previously the threshold was 60 CCF, but based on some feedback from the board, we're kind of tying it now to what would hit about 2% at the top 2% of customers. So that brings it down to 59 CCF. And then we're recommending for stage 2, setting it at 154 CCF per bi-monthly billing cycle. So that works out to be about 1,920 gallons of water per day. So there's about 1% of our single family residential customers in 2020 who had that kind of water use. And just for comparison, we've got some statistics here, again, looking at 2020 data. Average single family customer use is about 225 gallons per day. That's looking at the entire year. If you just look at the summer, it rises to about 275 gallons per day. And so, based on our, some kind of review of the data and looking at what these numbers mean, we think that these are fair numbers. One other thing I do want to just let the board know is when we were looking at the data, when you look at these percentages, you have to take them with a little bit of a grain of salt, because what we saw happen in 2015 is that the number of customers who had exceedances was quite a bit lower than we had anticipated. And in fact, that number is lower than the years that came after. So it does seem to suggest that, the drought messaging and the outreach, and in particularly the outreach related to the penalty ordinance, does seem to reach customers. And they do, those customers who have excessive use do seem to bring that use down. So we wanted to share this information with the board. Could you go to the next slide, please? So, and I can go back to that table with the thresholds if there's any discussion, but our current plan is that if these recommended amendments sound amenable to you, we would go back and legal would work on drafting a revision and amendment to the ordinance, and we would bring that back in September. So the first reading would be September 14th. The second reading of the ordinance would be September 28th. And assuming that, the board does adopt the revised ordinance, it would go into effect about 30 days later. One other thing I do want to just mention really quickly is, that's just setting the ordinance up. That doesn't mean that it's actually in effect. We would have to take some kind of action to enact the ordinance. Like, for example, if we decided, later this winter or next spring that we were going to a stage 2 or a stage 3 or 4 drought, then we would actually enact the ordinance. And we've been discussing internally that anytime we do enact the ordinance, we want to do some pretty significant outreach, just, messaging to our customers in general, and then targeted outreach to those customers who might be affected to, again, give them a chance to course correct before they get caught by this ordinance. I mean, my personal goal would be that we would have nobody violating this ordinance, because in a drought, we do such a good job of getting the word out and our customers respond. And so nobody's using excessive amounts of water. So I'll pause there and just invite if there's any questions or discussion.
Board members, questions? Andy,
I don't have any questions, but I'm comfortable with staff's recommendation.
All right.
Agreed.
I look forward to the discussion in September, and I think it's a reasonable approach that staff is putting forward. I just hope that we take into account, more people are at home now than they were during the previous droughts. So therefore, water consumption is up because of, again, COVID. And hopefully by the time, if we ever have to deal with this, COVID is over and people are back at work. But we may not be in that situation, and more home usage could be at home with people not in school or not at their office.
Certainly that indoor use is up slightly because we have more people at home. We've had exceptions for this excessive use penalty based on higher household occupancy. I'm sure that we, when calculating the water budget, that's the basis for those exemptions. We could, consider that a higher need to, pour an extra glass of water to drink. But the driver of excessive use here is really outdoor consumption. It's really irrigation. So that seems to be the biggest driver here. Not necessarily that there's a little bit more cooking, a little bit more indoor consumption. I'd be open to clarification from staff on what that really means to the thresholds, but it really seems like this is excessive use that's happening outdoors. And my concern about the proposed changes, first, I think that the warning makes this program too little too late. So after a 2-month cycle, we are already getting into the middle or late fall. And at that point, we really need the customers to be responding. We need to be able to get the reductions that we need. And we're on a 2-month billing cycle. We're basically losing the opportunity to get our customers on board and to be aware that excessive use is going on and for the penalty to mean anything. This could be useful for a very prolonged drought where we're just teetering in the middle of a worsening drought as it gets worse and worse. But if we want to actually have this take effect and get the effect that we want, I think we need to do something a little bit different with a warning if we were going to do a warning. So I would suggest that if we were to do a warning, that we would issue the warning preemptively based on customers who have use approaching that level. So, not waiting until we get the bill back that already says they're already past the threshold, but, we know that their historic usage is already past that level. If we look back at the prior year and see that customers who are, using somewhere in this 1,200 to 1,200 gallons per day and above, we can notify them. We know who uses that level of water typically in a typical summer pattern, and we can get in touch with them before that 2-month billing cycle really gets going. So I'm open to a warning so that we are providing customer notification, but it really is unworkable for our 2-month billing cycle to suspend the penalty until it's already too late. So that's my view on the warning. On a second issue, I just simply think that the stage 2 threshold is too low. I think we need to do much more with this program. And while I think we could look at more of the thresholds for all of the stages in more depth, like a higher threshold for stage 4. At a minimum, I think we should just simply apply the threshold for stage 3 to stage 2. And I think that would be a program that is really able to capture excessive use. I think just having the top 1% incorporated into this program is just not accomplishing enough.
Okay, thank you, Director Katz. So just to confirm, you were thinking that you're saying you would like to see that the threshold that we have recommended for stage 3, you would like to see us actually start that at stage 2. So having the threshold be lower. Okay. And one other.
At this time, I'm not expressing a strong opinion this year that we modify the proposed thresholds for stages 3 and 4. We could revisit that at a later time. But it does seem like if this drought continues, we could easily end up at stage 2. And so it seems like we should be reaching 2% of customers and not merely 1%.
Okay, thank you for that input. And one other thing I do want to just quickly comment on, Director Coleman, just in response to your concern. Yeah, I mean, I think, in terms of folks being home more and COVID, we have taken a look at indoor water use. Based on our calculations, indoor residential water use has gone up a bit, but it's not a huge amount. It's, district-wide, it looks like maybe it's gone from about 50 gallons per person per day to around like 55 or 56 gallons per person per day. So I do think that, the way that we're setting these thresholds, it is really more focused on outdoor irrigation. So I don't think that, that increase in hand washing and toilet flushing and such would necessarily.
I agree that it's not going to be hugely significant unless you have a large family who's at home and homeschooling. I do know a lot of people, though, who never had vegetable gardens, have vegetable gardens the last 2 years because they're afraid to go to stores. And, now they're giving away vegetables that you didn't have before. I mean, so there's been an increase in that. And so there is some of that usage going on that way, too.
Thank you. Are there other comments, particularly on the thresholds themselves?
Anyone? All right. Alice, you have what you need?
Yeah, so I think, you know, Clifford, I don't know if you have any additional questions or comments on this.
No, I think what I heard from the board was take a look at, you know, how COVID might affect water use. So I think we can look at that and provide some information. Director Katz had suggested stage 2 be at the stage 3 level. And also that the warning might be a preemptive warning, maybe telling the customer that you are at risk of exceeding the excessive use ordinance, and then when their first bill comes, then that's the actual penalty they would receive. And so for us to look into that as a possibility. Okay, thank you for your feedback, and we'll be back in September with the ordinance. Last presentation, I don't want to take away from Derry's very special day of getting appointed to oversee the new Department of Diversity, Equity, and Culture. He has a very brief presentation on the work that we've been doing. So with that, Derry, take it away.
Hello, board members. We will try to make this brief in terms of what we want to provide you updates with. Just to continue moving forward with where we are, we have been working on the Racial Equity and Justice projects and the Diversity Inclusion Strategic Plan going forward. Today, what we'll do is real briefly provide you with an update on where we are with both of those projects. So to begin with, we had been working on the racial equity and justice strategies consistently throughout the time that we've been initially had the resolution from the board. And so what we want to begin with is just kind of giving you some update on strategy 1, which has been about listening to the voices of Black and African Americans and other communities. One of the things that the team had been doing is hosting some strengthening resilience and enhancing wellness sessions. We've been doing that in partnership with our EAP provider, Claremont, and that has been consistently attended by employees. The focus has been on talking specifically about some of the stressors that employees have been facing over the last 18 months. We also are working right now on the development of a biannual employee engagement survey, which will be our ongoing methodology for listening to employee voices and providing opportunities for employees to express where we are in terms of both employee engagement and within employee engagement, inclusion being one of those factors that we're looking at, and then diversity inclusion being another element of that. In terms of strategy 2, we've been working on how we continue to devise solutions to the impacts of prejudice in the organization. And one of the things we've continued to do is expand our focus groups. The Winters Group in their cultural audit provided focus groups on several communities. We also identified that they did not have adequate information that was collected specifically from our LGBTQIA+ community, our Asian Pacific Islander males, white males, and also we did not have any groups that specifically talked to individuals identifying as 2 or more races. We have added some additional focus groups for each of those areas. Our last focus group will be actually tomorrow on the 11th, and then we'll be concluding all of our data and adding an addendum to the Winters Group cultural audit and using that data to continue to analyze how we're doing in terms of employee voice regarding where we are in terms of our diversity, equity, inclusion efforts. For strategy 3, which is looking at our processes and practices, our teams have been working specifically on evaluating the data that's been collected from the Winters Group and looking at our pilot projects. Each of the projects are right now at minimum at their data analysis phase. What will come after that is more work specifically around community engagement. In particular with the the pilot projects, we'll be looking at, are there policies and procedures that need to be adapted based on the work that the teams are doing? Within the community engagement phase, we're again facilitating dialogues with groups that are most impacted as we're doing data research in each of the 5 areas. And then what we'll be doing with that is we're currently also having the ONG racial equity team, which is the subcontractor from the Winters Group, do more intensive community engagement training with a select group of people who are part of the core team right now, to ensure that we have some protocols for how we want to do community engagement on the long term. And this is specifically regarding how we're actually going to be addressing policies and procedures and practices going forward. On strategy 4, specifically looking at policies and procedures, the Winters Group is providing us a review of our existing civil service rules. We should have the data back from Winters Group for the September meeting. With that data, we also will be working with our human resources group, specifically the recruitment team, to look at more details on their current recruiting practices and how we can get more of an analysis on how they're doing specifically. With that, the 7 policies that the Winters Group did do a review on, we're currently looking at how we can begin the implementation process in implementing some of their recommendations that were made. And then finally, we're working with Winters to draft kind of an approach to model how we will do review of policies and procedures on the long term. Our currently policies and procedures are on a 2-year update cycle. And as they update, we want to have an equity tool that will allow us to look closer at those policies and procedures as they come due, and have our staff be able to look at those and evaluate are there updates that are needed with the use of an equity lens. To assist us in kind of moving forward, one of the things that the board did ask the Winters Group about was kind of benchmarking where we are in terms of us compared to other agencies. And while we do not have that, what we have been doing specifically with the senior management team, has been using a tool called the Global Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Benchmarks Survey. That survey has a series of best practices which measure the maturity of an organization in terms of DEI practices. And what we're currently doing is working with the senior management team to identify specific areas that are identified within the benchmarks to kind of do a self-assessment about where we are and look at opportunities to integrate some of those practices, determining where we are and looking at practices that we can integrate into our strategic plan moving forward. So the benchmarks are broken into 4 groupings. One is a foundation group, which is about strategy for diversity, equity, inclusion. The second group is about internal practices, which again are related to recruitment, advancement, our existing classification and compensation systems, and then work-life integration. The third group on bridging is about how we align the organization, looking at specific assessments that we can use long-term. As mentioned earlier, our work climate survey kind of fits into that category, looking at specific measures and research. One of the things we want to be able to integrate is a DEI dashboard that we'll be able to maintain on a regular basis, looking at our general practices and looking at where we are with our overall diversity numbers. It also includes DEI communications, our learning and development programs, how those get updated to maintain a focus on diversity, equity, inclusion. And then finally, we're looking at external items, which again, are community and government relations, looking at our overall service delivery, our marketing, customer service factors, and then our sourcing. So within these, our 5 pilot projects do cover several of these areas. So as we're going to continue to work on these, we will be addressing some of the best practices with this information. So next is the development of the diversity, equity, inclusion strategic plan. And so the data that we're pulling together is going to be pulling together information from the cultural audit. We'll be looking at our existing diversity, equity, inclusion efforts, which range everywhere from our existing diversity committees and affinity groups throughout looking at information that we've been pulling from our affirmative action plans and existing outreaches. And then looking also at new DEI initiatives, which will be fueled a lot from our 5 pilot projects, also looking at information that we've received from our affinity groups, which include gender identity, looking at mentoring programs, other types of things that would become part of our long-term process. Also within that, our work that was done specifically on the women in the trades and recommendations that we received from them as well. So last thing I want to cover real quickly is, again, kind of give you a feel for how widespread the work on diversity, equity, and inclusion is right now. Is that the State Water Resources Control Board presented a draft resolution on racial equity. As we did a review of that, we find that we are very much aligned with a lot of things that they have included in their draft. You have a copy of that in your package. Number one, they are kind of acknowledging the responsibility of water agencies to address racial inequities, both from an internal perspective and externally. It affirms the state of California's role in perpetuating inequities toward BIPOC individuals and communities. And then finally, it also commits to the development of a racial equity action plan. And our diversity and inclusion strategic plan will have many of the elements that we're looking at. They also are using the Government Alliance for Racial Equity as the foundation for their racial equity action plan, as we are also using resources from the same source. So our next steps is we're going to be continuing to implement all the recommendations from the Racial Equity and Justice Project, and the 1 and 2 strategies of strategies 1, 6, 7, and 8. Those were phase 1 and 2 strategies that we have began from the very beginning. Next, we'll continue to work on the development of our work plans for phase 3 strategies, which is strategies 2, 3, 4, and 5, which are very much intertwined with the work that we've been doing with ONG Racial Equity and the Winters Group. We will continue to work on the racial equity pilot projects, and the 5 pilot projects are working on recruitment and selection. They're looking at our promotion processes, looking at community engagement, contract equity, and also how we are working with our communities in terms of capital improvement projects. And then finally, we're going to continue the development of the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Strategic Plan. Staff has begun moving forward. We have not yet received kind of the instruction that we were going and guidance that we're going to get from the Winters Group at this point. However, staff is already working on our outline and working on specific elements of the plan as we're going forward. So at this point, I want to open up for any questions if you have any.
I'm not seeing any questions. Anyone?
Great.
All right. Thanks very much, Jerry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Derry. Last is attached as the monthly report. I can certainly answer any questions you may have. I will note in the report we do talk about our preparations for PSPS this year. So if any of your constituents ask about the portable generators out in their neighborhood, we have information about that in an info memo as well as the monthly report.
All right. Thank you, Cliff. Reports. Committee reports minutes from the July 13th, 2021 Planning and Legislative Resource Committees were included in the agenda packet. Marguerite has notified me she had to leave a little bit early, so we don't have a report from her from Planning Committee. Do we want either Director Mellon or McIntosh? Can you give a summary?
Let me look up real quick. I had paper right here.
Just quick highlights.
Well, first of all, we had the innovation project, which is really terrific. It shows that the district is going to continue to be a leader. A little bit of a surprise to me that we did this, or Clifford did this, without support from a source that I would have thought would be a good source, our friends at Aqua. But that's the way it goes. We got that. This is always difficult to say. We got that damn report again. And it covered the work that's being done to make sure our dams are staying up to snuff. And let's see, there was 2 other items, and I'm trying to find my report sheet because I made notes.
Groundwater sustainability plan.
Thank you. Groundwater sustainability, and I discovered to my surprise that we actually have a Castro Valley groundwater basin too. That's included in all of that. And it shouldn't have been a surprise because there's so many people having wells out there. And what's the last one?
Dump truck services.
Dump truck services. So we've had a small problem. We really insist on quality drivers that are doing their job well. But that means we have to be able to sit and work with them. And the COVID's prevented that. And so we've had to do a little bit more contracting out, not a little bit, a lot more contracting out than we would have liked to. And while the unions commented on it, 444 did in particular, they nonetheless recognize there was a trade-off here that hopefully we will get past of being able to start getting people in that we can train and train thoroughly. And that's what we did in planning this morning. And for a change, because there wasn't a backup committee to us, we're not sure if we ran long or not.
All right, thank you, Frank. Other items for future consideration, please submit those to the general manager. And now it's time for director comments. I see Director Patterson's hand.
I wanted to comment that since our last meeting, and in conjunction with the celebration of Juneteenth, and thank Director Mellon for his support, that the Oakland NAACP, along with a sponsorship by the Oakland A's, full-page ad. I hope you can see it.
Holy mackerel.
This is a full-page ad, and it was in the Post newspaper. That's my picture at the bottom. This is called Passing the Torch and Male Achievement Award. And this is what they gave me for 2021. It signifies a lot of the work I did back during the civil rights movement in moving a program that is now recognized essentially in the East Bay. And I guess they're pushing Taj to continue the relay. You saw the Olympics last week and what happened in my specialty, which is the 1600 meter relay. So I have run a leg and I'm passing the torch. But there were people before me and there will be people after me. And I hope that the accomplishment here with EBMUD even adds to that. I've been here a long time and in the community. So I just wanted to share that with you. Too bad we weren't in our meeting together so you could see it more definitively. But we'll try to get it around to you. Thanks again, Frank.
Thank you, Bill. Be sure to bring that to the next meeting, hopefully soon. Love to see that. John.
I'll be real quick, just two things. I was fortunate, I went to a Boy Scout Camp Wolfboro the third week of July and ran into an employee, Chris Farajon. I'm probably mispronouncing Chris's last name. Troop 405 out of Pleasant Hill. And it's really nice that we have the ability where employees can be giving back to their community, such as Chris is doing as a Scoutmaster of Troop 205. And we had a nice chat and good guy and glad he's at EBMUD. Finally, I did talk with Barbara Hockett from Central San Friday, I think it was, and she was talking about recycled water. And I guess I would like to ask Clifford and the board if we can have maybe a meeting to talk about how we could do more recycled water potentially between EBMUD and Central San, especially in light of a drought sometime in September, October timeframe, how what they have is available as product and what we have as a need. If that can be done, that would be great. So that's my thing. Thank you.
John.
Yeah.
John, I just wanted to say, everybody missed you at the meeting. Mike Tagliani took me up and I went to our meeting at UMRA. And the reporting out was very good. We're getting ready for the budget and all the other things. And I gave them your congratulations, and they're sorry that you couldn't attend the meeting. And there was a rousing ovation amongst them after much discussion, and they're out looking at their budgets and whatnot. They'll be reporting back to you if we have the meeting on October 1st, but they'll be reporting back at that time. But it was a good experience, and it was good to see so many of the folk. And the only negative thing was the fires that were burning on the Nevada side above Alpine. But it was a great meeting, and I enjoyed being a part of that. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill, for going. That's my first UMRA meeting I've missed since it began. And I think we're targeting October 5th for the party barbecue, assuming things work.
October
COVID-wise,
1st.
And then having the UMRA meeting, huh?
October 1.
October 1st.
October 1. Okay, thank you. My calendar's wrong, so thank you.
Great. All right. If there is nothing else for our regular business here, we will just announce that our next regular meeting of the board will be held on Tuesday, August 24th at 1:15 p.m. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.